Always a special pleasure to get together when there's the alumni, for many of the girls that I taught, to see how you are maturing and growing and preparing yourself for the next stage of your lives, Be'ez Hashem. And it's also very, thank you. It's also very special that it's 3 weeks. A great time of introspection. Klal Yisrael is mourning the loss of thousands of Yidden that have died this past year. Sitting back and watching all the events in Eretz Yisrael and the terrible trauma of anti-Semitism, which is around the world in record speeds and rates that we haven't seen before. And obviously, whenever we see difficulties in Klal Yisrael, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to us. The Gemara says that Ein parani is ba la'olam ela b'shvil Yisrael. Suffering and difficulties and tragedies and hardships don't come to the entire world except to redirect and to awaken the hearts of Klal Yisrael. If there would be a tornado in Kansas, that tornado is to waken us up and realize HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a midas hadin that is in the world. If there'll be a tsunami in Japan, like there was many, many years ago, it wasn't for the Japanese. It was for Klal Yisrael to realize Hashem, something is bothering, something is making HaKadosh Baruch Hu react in such a way. So certainly we understand that if the piranhas, if the suffering that comes to the world is directed at Klal Yisrael, for example, you'll have a Simchas Torah that we had of this year, and a war that's been grinding on for so many months since then, and you'll see anti-Semitism on all corners of the universe, and you'll see that the Jewish people don't seem to be safe anywhere they go anymore. So then for sure, Ein paranias ba'la'ilam, there never would be suffering like this. Ela b'shvil Yisrael, it's for us. It's for us to take a message, for us to learn from Hashem, for us to understand, Ma Hashem Elokecha, Sholem Yimach, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from each and from every one of us? And that's why the Bnei Yissaschar says that if you count up the days of the Bein HaMetzarim, from Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, Shivasa B'Tammuz, until Tisha B'Av, you have 22 days altogether. And he says if you take those 22 days and you multiply it by the amount of hours per day, that's 24 hours a day. 22 times 24, who's good at math? You can use your fingers if you want. 528. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, there are 528 hours in the 3 weeks between Shivasa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. 528 is the gematria of Mafteach. Mafteach is the key. The Mafteach to the Geula, the key to the Geula, to the redemption of Klal Yisrael. The Mafteach to the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu is what are we going to do during these 528 hours of our life during these 3 weeks? How much introspection are we going to have? His beinunus, will we think, will we stop, will we try to understand? If the Beis HaMikdash is still lying in ruins after 2,000 years, it must mean that in these 2,000 years, Klal Yisrael has not done enough to prove to Hashem that we are worthy of having a Beis HaMikdash come back. And if that is the case, then if we use this time wisely, and we have the maftech, we have the key in our hands, to open up the floodgates of the Geula, of the redemption, then perhaps we will be zeicha that not only will there be a Geula for Klal Yisrael, but as we're going to try to learn tonight, the Geula for Klal Yisrael begins with each and every one of you. That means that every single one of us needs our own geula, our own redemption. We need the maftech, the key that's going to open up the locks that we have on our heart, the locks that we have on our soul, the locks that we have in our minds. We need to open ourselves up for our personal geula, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring the ultimate geula to Klal Yisrael. And this really is an idea that is spoken about in the Nefesh HaChaim. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin writes a very fascinating idea, very Kabbalistic, and he writes the following. He said, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded B'Tzalel to build the Mishkan in the Midbar, he says B'Tzalel knew the Oisiyos, he knew all the letters of the Aleph Beis, he knew the mystical ideas, and he was able to harness all of the koiches, all of the powers of Ma'aseh Bereishis, the creation of the world. There are many, many olamis, there are many spiritual worlds that you and I cannot see right now, but they exist. And each one of those worlds has tremendous amounts of power, of impact, of hashpah, of an influence on this world. And B'Tzalel was able to take all the koichais, all of the powers, all the mystical ideas that were there, and he harnessed them all together to build a place called the Mishkan. That in this world, down here in the physical world, you take all the physical things. You take wood, and you take copper, and you take tapestries and wool, and all the different things that were used to make the Mishkan, and it becomes an edifice in this world where the Shechina is going to dwell. You have to be a B'Tzalel. You have to be a Dor Day, a generation that had a heightened level of understanding of Hashem to be able to do such things. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, that's wonderful when there's a Mishkan. It's wonderful when there's a Beis HaMikdash. So we're harnessing all these koichais, all these olamais, all these spiritual worlds, all these mystical ideas, and the Shechina is coming down, funneling itself into this world through the Mishkan, through the Beis HaMikdash. But what happens when there's no Mishkan? What happens when there's no Beis HaMikdash anymore? Where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to bring his Shechina down to this world? And we all know the famous words that are quoted almost every year in Parshas Truma, when Chazal point out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, Ve'asu li migdash, make for me a migdash, make for me a migdash, a sanctuary, V'shechanti b'seicham, and I will dwell in it. But our sages teach us it's not the right grammar. It should have said, Ve'asu li migdash v'shechanti b'seicha, and I will dwell inside of it. What does it mean, v'shechanti b'seicham, I will dwell inside of it? It's plural, meaning I will dwell inside of you. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, you know what the Torah is telling us? Just like the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan was a place that harnessed all of these powers of the Rabbi Shalom, all of Ma'aseh Bereishis, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu used to create the world, all the Chachma, all the Deya, all the Bina, all the Das, everything. All of the most spiritual elements and entities of this world to create a universe. And that's how the Mishkan itself was created. Every single one of us is no less of a Mishkan, of a dwelling place for the Shechina, than the Beis HaMikdash itself was. And that means that in every single one of us, there are the koichais of Ma'aseh Bereishis. In every single one of us, there are powers from all the olamis HaKadoshim, all of the holy worlds, that are filled with Kedusha, and Ruchnius, and Shechina, and Torah. And therefore, says the Nefesh HaChaim, a person has to appreciate who you are. You're not just a young lady who's walking the streets of Los Angeles, California, and you're dressed differently than every other person on the road. I walked into a store today, I had to pull my eyeballs out of my head. I think the woman thought that she doesn't have to get dressed when she leaves her house in the morning. I was in absolute shock. She's working in a store. There's customers. No respect for themselves. No busha, no shame, no nothing. So you think, what's the difference between me and them? I wear clothes when it's 100 degrees outside, and nobody else wears clothes. Says the Nefesh HaChaim, not true. Do you know who you are? You're Mishkan Hashem. You are a person that the Shechina is resting upon. You are a person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu harnessed all the koiches of this world. The same way that He created the universe, He created you. And inside of you is nothing less than all the kelim, all the vessels, all the places where the Shechina can dwell in the Mishkan. It will dwell inside of you as well. And if our personal Mishkan is strong, and our personal Mishkan is running powerfully, and we have all of the tune-ups in place, and our minds are sound, and our hearts are beating and pumping ruchnius, and our neshama is guiding us, so then you are a person that is building the Mishkan inside yourself, and you are one of the builders of the eventual Mikdash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring down to this world. But if our personal Mishkan is not running the way that it should, if our personal Mishkan, it doesn't have all the Kedusha, doesn't have all of the Ruchnius, doesn't have all the Yirah Shamayim, doesn't have all the Simchas HaChaim, doesn't have all the Avas HaTorah that it is supposed to have, then our Mishkan, who we are, has an element of Chorban, of destruction, and then we continue to unfortunately allow the Chorban of the Beis HaMikdash to lie in ruins. For any generation in which the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt, it is ke'ilu, it is as if that is the generation that destroyed it. And the Nefesh HaChaim is explaining, when we are destroying of our own personal inner world of Mishkan, and the Shechina cannot dwell in us the way that it's supposed to, then it extends the unfortunate gullus that we have in Klal Yisrael. Our spiritual gullus is the gullus of the Jewish people. Our Chorban is the Chorban of the Beis HaMikdash. Our being out of touch with our nefesh, our neshama, our leiv, our midos, our ruchnius, our yirah shamayim, has a global effect on all of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, the goal of a Yid during these times, these 3 weeks, is we want to make sure that we are using our Mishkan for the right things. But one thing that Klal Yisrael does, and they do it very well, and that is that from every Chorban that there has ever been in our history, it is from the Chorban itself that Klal Yisrael rebuilds itself. If you want a proof of that, look at the world that we live in today. 80 years ago, there was a place in the world called Auschwitz. And from the ashes of Auschwitz, from the infernos of the gas chambers, Klal Yisrael crawled out of the hole of destruction, and they rebuilt Klal Yisrael in a way nobody ever dreamed of. There are more yeshivas, and more chidarim, and more Beis Yaakovs, and more koilels, and more svarim that have been written. And there are more shuls, and there are more centers of Yiddishkeit in the world than there's ever been before. And it all came after the Holocaust. How could it come after the Holocaust? Klal Yisrael was destroyed we were 6 million, we were murdered. And even those that survived, many no longer believed in the Rebbeinu Shalom. How is it possible that after all of that, we built up Torah in such a grander and glorious way nobody could have imagined back then? I remember years ago, you too young. This goes back probably, must be over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I think you're probably still in more Rishki's class at that time. And there was a very big tzaddik that came to California, came to Los Angeles. His name was Rav Chaim Halpern, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha. He was a Rosh Hashiva in France. Oh, Maisa Ashkacha, he came to us and how we got to him and became like a Rebbe of our family. He was like a Baal Musar from the previous generation in Auschwitz, which was his 16th concentration camp. He met Rav Gershon Lieben, who was one of the main disciples of the Alter of Nevarduk. He was taken so much by a man who was living in Auschwitz with the Rebbeinu Shalom that when the war was over and he was still alive, Rav Gershon said, I'm going to France to rebuild the Nevarduk yeshivas. Reb Chaim, come with me. And he went. And he came to LA. And we got very close to him. And I said, Rabbi Burstein, you know, this big tzaddik from France, Rabbi Halpern. He said, he survived 16 concentration camps. I said, could I bring him to Beis Yaakov to speak to the girls? It will be such a chizuk for them to see him. He said, I happen to know who he is. He said, yes, let's bring him in. So Rav Chaim Halpern comes to Beis Yaakov. And before he even goes into the room, into the lunchroom that was packed with all the girls, he's standing in the hallway. And he's looking at a room filled of Beis Yaakov girls. And he begins crying. And he says, whatever it was at that time, 70 years ago, when I was in Auschwitz, I never dreamed there'd be even one Beis Yaakov girl. And to see a room of hundreds of Beis Yaakov girls, what a mace, what a miracle is that? How did Klal Yisrael rebuild itself after a Chorban? Everything was destroyed. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the enemies of Klal Yisrael, they can come along and they can destroy our bodies. They can destroy our yeshivas. They can destroy our buildings. They can take away families. Rachmana litzlan lo aleinu. But one thing they can never take away, and that is they can never take away the Mishkan that you have inside of you. They can never take away a neshama that allows for the Shechina to dwell inside of it. They can never take away a neshama that worked and worked and worked. You know, just a few weeks ago was the Yortzeit of the Klausenberger Rebbe, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha. He was in Auschwitz in the final period of Auschwitz, the last year before they were redeemed. And in one of those very trying times, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam v'Zichram, they decided they're going to take the Yidden on a death march, which was not uncommon. The end of the war was coming. They knew that their days were numbered, and they decided that let's try to get rid of as many as we can. And it was a sweltering day. It was boiling hot outside. No water. I don't know if they even had shoes on. No food, nothing. And the rule of it is that if you stumble in the line, if you fall out, you're getting shot, you're getting killed, that's it. And anyone that got weak, and anyone who was thirsty, and anyone who was dehydrated, who couldn't walk anymore, shot along the road. And the heat was pounding down on them. And at one point, the Nazis put them into a field, and they told them, just sit there until we're ready to leave. And the sun was baking down on their heads so much, they were all sure they're going to die from dehydration. And all eyes are on the Klausenberger Rebbe. And they're all looking to him. Some words of chizuk. Something that can help them. Something that can pick them up out of this despair that they are in. And the Klausenberger Rebbe said, don't despair. Because even here on the death march, even in this empty, abandoned field, you should know HaKadosh Baruch Hu has not abandoned us. And he looked at all the Yidden in their faces that were looking for some kind of inspiration. He said, start digging into the ground. Dig. They're looking, dig, he said. And the Yidden are in a field that is baking in the sun, in the middle of the summertime, somewhere in Europe. And they start digging into the ground. And lo and behold, the next thing you know, the ground starts putting up water. Water's underneath the soil. And they're lapping up the water and they're drinking. And their lives were saved. And the Rebbe looked at all the Yidden and he said, this is just to teach you for the rest of your life. In the darkest moments of your life, you have to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there. In Chorban, the great Amunah of Klal Yisrael, the great levels that we reach in our Ruchnis and Avodas Hashem, we always are going to rebuild. So where do we start during this time of the year? Where do we start with our rebuilding of maybe our personal Chorban, of what it is that we need to work on? So I was thinking perhaps that if we go into the famous Mishnah in Tainis, the Mishnah over there says the following: Chamisha devarim ir la'aveseinu. There were 5 tragedies that befell our forefathers b'shivasa b'Tammuz, on the 17th day of Tammuz. And each one of those tragedies is something that is not just the actual tragedy, but it is a message for all of the generations. We're not going to go through all of them, but I want to start with the first one and we'll see where we get. The first of the tragedies that befell Klal Yisrael on Shivasa B'Tammuz, anybody knows?
Moshe dropped the luchos?
Oh. Nishtabru haluchos. Moshe didn't just drop the luchos. Moshe Rabbeinu threw down the luchos and he intentionally broke the luchos. What a tragic day in the history of Klal Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu is commended for his duties, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Yasher koichacha kasher shibarta. Yasher koich, strength to you, Moshe, that you broke the luchos. You did the right thing. What is going on over here? We know Klal Yisrael comes to Har Sinai, and they're elevated to the highest of heights. They are on the level of Nevuah, no less than Moshe Rabbeinu. That means they see Hashem, they talk to Hashem, they hear Hashem, they know Hashem. The clarity of vision that every single Yid had by Har Sinai was unparalleled in history. So much so was the Kabbalah Sator that took place that they went back to the level of Bechira, of Kedusha, of sanctity of Adam and Chava before the original Chit. Their Kulai Kedusha, Kulai Taif, their Bechira is so strong, they're never going to make a mistake. They are holding by the highest level possible. And there they are by the foot of the mountain. And they're basking still in the glory of the Shechina. They could probably hear the echo of the shofar still blowing in the background. The smoke was still clearing. The mountain was still rumbling as it was put back on its place. Klal Yisrael is in a different planet of existence. And Moshe is summoned to the mountaintop and he says, don't worry, in 40 days I will be back. And Klal Yisrael is waiting. 1, 2, 20, 30, 39. Whoops. Is it 39 or 40? We're not sure. And they made a mistake in their counting. And they thought that the 39th day was the 40th day. And the Satan comes along and starts getting them to panic. And he shows them an apparition of the coffin of Moshe Rabbeinu floating in the air, and they said, "Your leader Moshe, he died up on the mountain. He's no longer here." Chaos, panic, bewilderment sets in. Irbuvia, as Rashi says over there, everything got mixed up. And Klal Yisrael does the unthinkable. They dedicate their jewelry to a fire, and out of the fire pops a Egel HaZahav, a golden calf. And the next thing you know, Klal Yisrael is dancing around the golden calf. Now, even though almost all of the Mefarshim understand that this was not really Avodah Zarah and they were really not worshipping it, Klal Yisrael wouldn't do such a thing. But if Moshe Rabbeinu walks down from the mountain, and the last time that he saw Klal Yisrael was, they were on the same level of Nevuah as Moshe. The last time he saw them with crowns on their head, Nasiv and Ishma. The last time he saw them, they were all shining like a light from the Kiddush and the radiance of our Sinai. If the last time that Moshe saw them was like that, then when he comes down from the mountain and he hears their revelry and he sees their joy and he sees them dancing and he sees what looks like a graven image in the middle, Moshe Rabbeinu says, the people that were so high, they sunk so low. The people that were such Kedoshim, they became such Tameim. Is it possible? And as he gets closer and closer, starts seeing on the face the excitement. He sees in their body language the geschmack that they were having. He says, is it possible that a people like this are worthy of the Luchais? Carved out and written by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself? This is Kedusha, this is Tahara, this is Tumah. How could such things be? And Moshe Rabbeinu takes the luchas and he throws them on the ground and they shatter into 1,000 pieces. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yashukayach Moshe, you did the right thing. Says the Mishnah, tragic day in Klal Yisrael. The luchais we were supposed to carry with us, the luchais that were carved out by Hashem, written with the etzva, the finger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, had all the secrets of the universe in there, was going to accompany us everywhere that we go. But Klal Yisrael was unworthy of holding on to the luchais because we lowered ourselves from the madrega of ruchnias, of Torah, of kedusha that we were on. And so Hashem said, you don't deserve it anymore. And the luchos got smashed. The smashing of the luchos is tragic because it shows what a low level Klal Yisrael could sink to in 40 short days. From the highest of heights, Har Sinai, Naseh, Benishma, hearing the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu emanating from the Shechina itself, to looking like we're dancing around and worshipping a golden calf, that itself is a tragedy. Perhaps the starting point of our avodah during the 3 weeks is that we have to stop and we have to take stock of ourselves. Some of you are back from seminary a few months, some maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3, I don't know how long you're back. And every single one of you knows that when you are in that place called seminary in Yerushalayim HaKodesh for 1 year, every single one of you knows it was a different world altogether. It was a world of the Kaisel. It was a world of Keva Rachel. It was a world of Ruchnius. It was a world of Kedusha. It was a world of Yirah Shamayim. It was a world of Talmidei Chachamim. It was a world of looking at women, their tznius on a level unparred with anything else. Not just that they wear everything down, but the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, dignified, princess of Klal Yisrael. And you were there for that year. And you were davening like you never davened before. And you were absorbing the ruchnius like you never absorbed before. And you had all these plans in your mind, what it's going to be like when you're going to come back, and the madregas that you're going to hold on to, and the world that you're going to live in, and the kedusha that you're going to set is going to set the tone of your life. And I'm sure for many of you, you are clinging on to your naive aspirations that you had when you were young seminary girls. And for many of you, I'm sure, as you examine your daily prayers and your Yirah Shamayim and your Ruchnius and your Avas HaTorah and the simcha that you used to feel that you had on Shabbos when you were walking the cobblestone streets of the old city on your way to the Kaisel, day number 40. I'm sure that many of us feel we were holding on the highest of heights. Like those Yidden in Har Sinai, hearing the voice of the Shechina, living a life. Goosebumps, we lived with goosebumps every day over there. Tears would come to our eyes almost every day during Shmoneh Esrei. Some new midah that we want to work on and conquer, the things that we accomplished. Some of us in that year there, we can't even imagine how we do such things. And then you come back to the land of the Cheta Egel, Los Angeles, California. Egel Hazav everywhere that you look. Avodah Zarah. Interesting people. I think they're people that live here. Interesting billboards. I don't recommend really looking at them. You're not going to gain too much except some maybe nausea or something like that. And we begin to think back, where was I last year at this time? What were my aspirations when I came back to Los Angeles? How did I tell myself I'm going to live my life? And maybe there are commitments that we made to the Rebbeinu Shalom that we have fallen away from over the last year. Says the B'nai Yissaschar, this is the time of the maftech, of the key. You have the key to your geula. You have the power inside of you to make your changes, to open up yourself, to make those commitments that you knew were so real to you and so meaningful and made you so happy. And you come back here and you just don't see people living the way that you saw it over there. And therefore it's time to renew ourselves. Now I'm sure that you were all silly enough when you were in seminary to be makabel like 50 different things upon yourself that you wanted to work on. Because each and every one of you dreams you'll become the biggest tzaddikus in Klal Yisrael. And you could, but not if you accept 50 things on yourself. Maybe one thing you could accept on yourself. One thing that you used to do when you were in Eretz Yisrael, when you were in 71 thing that you haven't even thought of in the last 5, 6, 7, 10 months. That's the key to the 3 weeks. That's the key to rebuilding your Mishkan. That is the key to the Geula, to the redemption that is waiting inside of you. And if we begin to make those steps and those efforts and those changes, so then the Bein HaMetzarim, these 3 weeks of anguish and mourning and suffering for Klal Yisrael, it becomes the time of the rebuilding and the redemption of ourselves, and ultimately all of Klal Yisrael. There was once a very chashuv yid that lived in New York. His name was Rav Meir Greenfeld. And Rav Meir was very beloved in the community. He was what's called an askan. He was always doing and taking care of the shul and taking care of people and taking care of things that had to be done. He was a businessman that had a very successful company, and he was always giving stock and helping out others in need. And he was an ehrlich person that was respected and beloved by all. One day he woke up with a headache. He wasn't feeling so well. And he figured it's just whatever, cold, it's that season. And day number 2, he's taking his Tylenol and is drinking his liquids, not going away. Day number 3, he tells his wife, you know what, I think maybe I should go to the doctor. I'm not feeling well. Maybe I need some antibiotics. They go to the doctor, and the doctor begins running his exams on him. And he doesn't like the results that he's getting, and he sends him to a specialist, and the next thing you know, he's diagnosed with some illness. And it's quite far along in the stage. And he's in the hospital, and the doctors are not giving him much time to live. And it's a shock to the wife, and he has 3 sons. 2 of his sons live there in New York, and one son, Yosef, who now goes by the name of Joey, who is no longer religious anymore like his father, his mother, and his brothers, he lives in a place called Arizona. And the mother quickly calls all the sons. And she says, we have very bad news. Come to the hospital, please. Your father is not feeling well. He's not doing well. The doctors don't know how long he has to live. Please come. And she calls her son, Yosef, Joey. In Arizona, she says, Joey, Tati's not well. He wants to see all of his children. Please get on the next flight and come. And sure enough, of course, Tati is calling. He gets on the plane and he comes flying to New York. And the 3 brothers meet in that hospital room. And the father is already, his strength waning. He says, I want to speak to each of you one by one. When the first one, Yitzi, comes in, he says, Yitzi, he says, you know the business that I have. You've been working with me already for all these years. I'm leaving over the business to you. You're going to run it. You'll make it prosper. You'll make it grow. Don't forget to take care of the poor. Don't forget about your mother. Don't forget about your family. Make sure that you continue to give the tzedakah just the way that I did and keep the business going, be'ez Hashem. And Yitzi says, yes, Tati. Whatever you say, I will do. And he calls me to the next son. Mordechai, he says. He says, you've seen all my askanas, all of my efforts that I do on behalf of the community, how I take care of the shul, how I'm mechabed the rav, how I take care of those that are in need, all the many things that I do that nobody even knows about. That's your koyach. That's your job. I want you to take care of everyone from now on. You're the askan in my place. And Mordechai says, yes, Tati, of course, whatever you say. And now in walks Yosef, Joey, the son who is no longer on the derech of his parents and his family. And he walks in and he leans over the bed and his father says, Yosef, I have one last wish that I want to ask from you. But I need you to promise me whatever I ask, you're going to do. It is, of course, Ta. Whatever you ask, promise me. Whatever I ask of you, I want you to do. He said, of course, Tati. Whatever you ask, I will do. Your last wish, I will do. He looks up at his son and he says, Yosef, when I pass away, I want you to make sure that you never say Kaddish for me. What? He says. You heard me. I want you to make sure that when I pass away, you do not say a single Kaddish for me. That's my last wish. And Joey looks at his father and he says, if that's your last wish, that's what I'll do. He walks away in absolute shock. 3 days later, his father passes away. There they go to the Levaya. They're standing by the graveside, and the minhag is for the Avelim, for the mourners, the 3 sons, to say Kaddish. And they call all the brothers together to say Kaddish. 2 are from, 1 is not. And Joey has a command from his father, don't say Kaddish for me. And the 2 brothers walk up to say Kaddish, and Joey says, it's okay. And he doesn't join them. Everyone's like, what? Okay, you're not religious anymore. You don't say Kaddish for your own father? Now it's the week of Shiva. In the Shiva house, there's Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv. And the brothers are leading the davening. And every Kaddish, there's many Kaddishim that are said in the Shiva house. The 2 brothers, Yitzi and Mordechai, they say Kaddish. Joey doesn't say a single Kaddish. And by every minute, everyone's looking, what is wrong with this guy? Okay, you're not from, you don't say Kaddish for your father. What is wrong with him? And it's eating him out alive. At the end of the Shiva, he cannot take it anymore. He runs back to Arizona. And he feels wretched, miserable louse. How could it be my father didn't want me to say Kaddish for him? I'm that bad? I went that far? How could such a thing be? And one day he's sitting on his couch in Arizona, and he's got like this wild look in his eyes. And his wife, Baruch Hashem, who happens to be Jewish, comes over and says, Joey, is everything okay? And he says, no, it's not okay. She says, what's the matter? He said, our life is about to change. If you're with me, great. If you're not, I'm going on my own. She said, what are you talking about? And he tells her the whole story. And he says, I became so not from that my father did not want me to say Kaddish for him. It's time for me to do tshuva and become religious once again. And the rest is history. The man became a real Baal tshuva. His wife became frum, his children became frum. And today they are living a life of real Yiddishkeit. Sometimes when you're in the low place, that is where you're going to build yourself up from. And the second idea that is spoken about in this Mishnah of the tragedies that befell Klal Yisrael on Shivasa B'Tammuz is Batal HaTamid. The Korban Tamid, which was the daily sacrifice that was brought once in the morning and once Bein Arba and once in the late afternoon before the evening. When the Goyim came into the Beis HaMikdash, the Romans came in, they said, you're no longer allowed to bring the Korban HaTamid. Not in the morning, not in the late afternoon, not at all. Now the Tamid is a very unique Korban because you're allowed to bring it on Shabbos also. So that means 7 days a week. This Korban was brought in the Beis HaMikdash. 7 days a week, they saw the fires go up to the Shemayim. 7 days a week, they saw the Kohanim being oisik in the Avodah of Korbanais. And 7 days a week, it brought its bracha to Klal Yisrael. And they said, no longer, no Korban Tamid. But what's the oimik? What's behind the Korban Tamid? Tamid means constant, always. It was a korban that was constant and always brought in the Beis HaMikdash. The avodas Hashem of a Jew is something that should be tamid. It should be constant and always. Korban is a lashon of kirva, of being close. You are able to be mekarv, to bring yourself close to Hashem, tamid, all of the time. Meaning that Judaism, Yiddishkeit, is not a part-time job. It's not like when I go to the shir, now I'm practicing my Yiddishkeit. When I go to the shul, I'm practicing my Yiddishkeit. When I will be standing under the chuppah and the Shema brachas, then I will be practicing my Yiddishkeit. But you know what? When I'm chilling out, then I'm not practicing my Yiddishkeit. When it is Bein Azman and when it is the summertime, I'm not going to practice my Yiddishkeit so much. When nobody is looking, that Rabbi Burstein told me that there are still his Talmidos that might not have been his students for 30 years. When they hear his voice on the phone, they still start shaking. From hearing it over the loudspeaker all the time. You hear that? So when Rabbi Burstein's around, I am doing Yiddishkeit. When he's not around, there is no Yiddishkeit. Judaism, our Torah, our mitzvah, our Yiddishkeit, it is not part-time. It is not pick and choose. It is not when I'm in the mood, I'll do it. When I'm not in the mood, I'm not going to do it. It is tamid. It is something that is constant all of the time. And one of the greatest struggles of our generation against, especially living here in Los Angeles, California, with all of the many nisyonis that come along with it, is staying a person that is constantly serving Hashem. Tamid, all of the time. When I am in shul, when I'm at the shir, when I'm at my house late at night and nobody else is around, guess what? I'm still serving Hashem. When I'm driving in my car, I'm still serving Hashem. When my mother needs a chesed, and somehow I just can't hear her, even though I hear everything else today, but I just can't hear my mother calling me, it's still time to serve Hashem. And one of the downfalls of Klal Yisrael is when we think that Yiddishkeit is pick and choose what you like, what you don't like. Serve Hashem when it's convenient, when you're in the mood. And when you're not in the mood, and when you don't need to, or you don't feel you need to, you'll do something else. It doesn't work like that. Korban is his karvus is coming close. It is tamid, it is all of the time. And maybe we have to look back on the last year, and we have to ask ourselves, has our avodah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is it something that is constant? That is always? Are we trying? Are we strengthening ourselves in emunah and bitachon? Are we working on our davening? Are we working on our yirush? Are we working on it? Now again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't expect a robot, that's for sure. He knows that you're normal, He knows that you're humans, He knows you live in Los Angeles, California. And He knows that it's hard to keep focused, He knows that. But one thing Hashem wants, He wants us to try. That's all that He asks. Try our best. That's all that He asks. He doesn't ask to be perfect. He doesn't ask to be the biggest tzaddikus in the world. He doesn't say that you have to be Rebbe Kanievsky. Rebbe Kanievsky was Rebbe Kanievsky. She was able to have laser focus all of the time. Everyone she dealt with, everything was Yiddishkeit, everything was Yadus, everything. You're young. You live in Los Angeles. There's a lot of distraction in this town. Hashem knows that. But we got to try to be tamid, to be someone that is constant and consistent in our avodas Hashem. And that is the way that we rebuild ourselves. And that is the way that we even take challenging moments in our life when we're ready to throw in the towel, as they say, and we turn it into a moment of real, pure avodas Hashem. Sometimes in the most challenging moments of your life, the biggest nisyonis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu send a person, there is going to be the constant effort you have to make. And that's how you're going to get the closest to Hashem. Because by pulling out those koiches that are inside of you, which is all the energies of Ma'aser Bereishis, everything that was in the Mishkan, you pull it out, you become someone that is v'shechanti b'seicham. Hashem says, I'm going to dwell inside of you. I want to leave you off with one last Ma'aser. There was a family in, I believe, in Beitar in Eretz Yisrael. Father was like a choshev avreich, sitting and learning the Kala for many, many, many years. They had a large family, and their 17-year-old son, whatever we'll call him, Moshe, he began to go off the derech of Yiddishkeit. Little by little by little by little, didn't stop waking up for Shachris. They saw he wasn't making brachas anymore. Then they noticed that he's being Michal Shabbos, and it was devastating for the family. One day the boy comes to his father and he says, Tati, I want a tattoo. This is a boy in Beitar, in Eretz Yisrael, from a very frum family, and he says to his father, I want a tattoo. And of course you understand the father was not very excited to hear such things. He quickly calls his go-to rabbi in Nizan Yonim, someone by the name of Shimon Russell. He's today one of the biggest mechanchim in the world of struggling children. And he calls him up and he says, Rabbi, what am I supposed to do? My son has asked me for a tattoo. We don't want it. We don't want it. We don't want to have it. It's going to be an embarrassment. We can't have such a thing. So Shimon also says to him, he says, look, I understand you want to have it. But if you tell your son not to get one, what is your son going to do? The father says, he'll probably go get one anyway. Exactly. So, listen to me, he says. If you tell your son not to get a tattoo, so then your son is going to go get one anyway, and every time that he looks at the tattoo, wherever it might be on his body, he's going to look at it as a mark of disapproval from his father and his mother that my parents don't love me, they don't understand me, they don't accept me, they told me not to get one, and I got one anyway. He says, but if you accept that this is where your son is holding, and this is what he wants, and you tell him, my dear child, if that's what you want, we're not going to get in your way, go ahead. Then you and your wife have just said, we love you for who you are, and every time that he looks at that tattoo, he will look at it as a sign of love and acceptance from his father and his mother. And this father on the other end starts screaming, what are you talking about? That's crazy. We're not going to let my son get it. We're not going to tell him we want to do it. And Rabbi Russell keeps telling him back and forth again. It's either going to be a mark of your disapproval of your son, or your love and your acceptance of us, because he's going to get it anyway. After about an hour back and forth, the father says, fine, I got it, okay. I'm going to tell my son, he wants to get a tattoo, we're okay. We're good with it, it's fine. So Russell says, okay, you understand? Yes. Comfortable? Kind of. You got it? I got it. He says, good. Now, I want you to do one more thing. I want you to take your son to get the tattoo. He said, Rabbi Russell, it's one thing to accept it. It's another thing to take him there. Yes, he said, I want you to take him there, and I want you to pay for it as well. Because every time that boy is going to look at that tattoo, he is going to know how much you love him. And he'll never forget that. Take him to get the tattoo and pay for it. And the father goes back and forth, and finally then, he's mekabel the words of Rabbi Russell. He says, fine. He comes to his son, Moshe, and he says, Moshe, you want a tattoo? Yes. Tanti man talking, yes. He says, you want one? You can get one. Really? Thank you so much, Tanti. He says, come get your stuff. For what? He says, I'm going to take you there. You're taking me to get a tattoo? Yeah, I'm taking you. Let's go. And the son gets in the car with his father, and they drive out to some place, outskirts of Yerushalayim, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And they come to a tattoo parlor in the land of Israel. The kid walks in with his father, the Avrech and Koilo, probably had some dirt on his jacket over here, crumpled up hat, so his shoes are all scuffed. He walks in with his son. I didn't mean to speak Lashon Hara about all the Avrechim. Shouldn't be like that, but just trying to paint the picture. They walk in, and this kid is already a cool kid. He walks in, he sees this big Israeli tattoo artist with the ponytail and the shaved head and the tattoos all over his arm and earrings and nose rings and who knows what other rings. And he says to the guy, "Ani רוצה tattoo." Fine. Lay down on the table. Which one do you want? He picks out which one he wants. Now the Israeli guy is about to do the tattoo and he's looking at this picture. He sees the Avrech, the guy in Kollel, this room here, and he sees the boy. And he realizes what's going on over here. This is the father and the son. The kid is off the derech, and the father's taking him to get a tattoo. And before he can bring himself to put the machine onto the boy's flesh, he looks at the boy and he says, "You are so lucky. You are so lucky. This is your father." And then the man starts crying and he says, "If only my father would have taken me to get that first tattoo, I would not have ended up the way that I did so many years later, as far as I am from Yiddishkeit." And he says, "You know who your father is? You know what he's done?" He says, "Why are you getting this tattoo? Give the guy some nachas. Look what a special man he is." And he gives the whole kid a mussar shmuz. And he tells you have to appreciate what you have. You have to understand what this means. Your father's taking you. It's incredible. In the end, the kid got the tattoo. But it was a tattoo that was a mark of tremendous love that he had from his father. Fast forward 10 years. This kid did not remain off the derech the rest of his life. He was chayzer b'tshuva to the highest degree. He went back to yeshiva. He sat and he learned. He got married. He has children. He's learning in kollel. Yeah, with a tattoo on his arm. But a tattoo that came with love from a father who said to himself, whether things are going well or things are going difficult, our job is tamid, always, to be serving the Rebbeinu Shalom. And when a Yid is able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu no matter what is going on, you will not only build yourself, you will build the people around you. We're all into segulas. I'm sure that all of you are into many segulas. Everybody wants to become a kala. You're looking for that segula, 40 days of the Koisel, 400 days of Nishmas maybe, I don't know, whatever it is. It's 4 minutes of something else. All the segulas tied a ribbon around your string, go to every single Rebbe, get a bracha, daven everywhere. You know what the biggest segula is? Just build yourself up. And then you make yourself a Mishkan that is roy for Hashras, Shechina, for the Shechina to come and dwell inside of you. Every house is a Mikdash Ma'at. It is a microcosm of the Beis HaMikdash. That means that the Shechina wants to dwell in your home. But how can it dwell in your home if it can't dwell inside of you? So when we take these 22 days, these 528 hours of Bein HaMatzarim, which is the gematria of Maftech, is the key. And we begin to understand the key to our own personal geul in our lives, what we need to work on, who we need to become. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Asuli Mikdash, you made yourself into a Mikdash." V'shechanti v'seicham, I'm going to dwell inside of you. And if he dwells inside of each of you, that itself is the foundation that is going to bring the Geula, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring about the Beis Shlishi, and he will be V'shechanti v'seicha, he will dwell inside of it. May we be Zeichem Yitz Hashem, that we use the precious hours that are left of these 3 weeks already. Sunday night, already is Rosh Chodesh. That means there's not many days left of the key to our success. But if we grab hold and we take advantage of the time that Hashem has given us, and we begin to grow, we begin to work on ourselves and make the changes that we need to, and tap in to the Kedusha that we think and we know that we once upon a time had, and make ourselves better, then guaranteed, Hashem will dwell inside of you. And then we're mispalim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring the ultimate Mikdash that we're waiting for 2,000 years already, the Beis Shlishi that should be built in Heira B'Yamin. Is there any questions? You know it all already.